this video, we're going to be exploring another concept to do with Othello, this time comic, tragic or romantic, generic influences of Othello. So a bit of this, a bit of that. Shakespeare blends generic or generic conventions to great effect in Othello. And the first and perhaps most obvious one is the morality play. This is a medieval play. I've got a nice little picture here, as you can see, of some handsome gentlemen. The one on the left is every man, the one on the right is not. In this play, the everyman is Othello, which is unusual to have a racialized black everyman, as normally he'd be white and he'd be European and he'd be called something like Christian because he represented every Christian in his moral journey through life. But the important thing is in a morality play, every man or mankind would meet different vices personified, who would follow that person, taunt and torment them, and try and get them to make poor moral choices. And in this case, Iago really does fit the torturous devil figure of the vice. And he certainly torments Othello. So the first influence is the morality play. The second is a comic plot, or a tragic plot, if you think about Romeo and Juliet, the unruly daughter and the despairing father. This handsome gentleman on the right is Hortensio. Catherine, in Taming of the Shrew, is an incredibly unruly daughter. She doesn't want to do what she's told. She shouts abuse at men, and she definitely doesn't even want to be told she's wrong, which is what's happened here. Hortensio has tried to show her how to play the lute, and he stopped to say, I did tell her she mistook her frets. He said, "Oh, you've got a fingering wrong on the neck of the lute." And when, with a most impatient devilish spirit, frets call you these, quoth she, I'll fume with them. And with that word she struck me on the head, and through the instrument my pate made way. And there I stood amazed for a while, as on a pillory looking through a lute. I know this is a bit of an extreme example, but the unruly daughter can be a really funny device for really witty, outrageous women who have these amazing verbal sparring matches. Desdemona isn't that kind of unruly, but the unruly daughter can be used to tragic effect as well. Think about Romeo and Juliet. Both of those sets of parents are actually grieved to the point of dying because of what their children have done. So Romeo's mother doesn't survive the night, and Juliet's, I don't remember which parent it is, one of Juliet's parents also thinks they're going to die soon as well. And indeed, in fairness, the unruly behaviour you see from Desdemona has quite a different, quite sobering effect. Brabantio, her father, says, "Aye, she's dead to me." And then look at the words he's using to describe her behaviour. She's abused, stolen, corrupted. He says her behaviour is a preposterous erring away from what's natural. And she's not deficient, blind or lame, so why she's done it, he doesn't know. He's horrified that she's gone off and secretly got married. By contrast, just going to put this out there, when Jessica, the Jewish girl, daughter of Shylock in The Merchant of Venice, marries Lorenzo, the Christian, that is part of the happy ending of a comedy. Go figure that one out. Yes, different perspective there. And similarly, Brabantio's warning is quite stark. He says, "Look to her more if thou hast eyes. She's deceived her father and made thee." He's really upset by her behaviour. In fact, upset to the point that we don't see him again. During the action at the end of the play in Cyprus, we hear that her father is dead, says Gratiano. Thy match was mortal to him, and pure grief shore his old thread in twain. So you just shredded his life thread, snipped it right there, because he was so aggrieved that she married more. And of course, Gratiano is saying this to a dead Desdemona. Oh, yeah, didn't turn out so good. So maybe her father was right. Was he? So could be a comic plot. In this case, a little bit more serious, but has that potential and definitely that influence. Another comic plot that is playing out here, it's two sides of the same coin really, is the older husband who's cuckolded by his younger wife. Chaucer, who's the first writer of literature in English. If you ever do a degree, you'll definitely meet Chaucer. He's written a classic version of this story with Old Man January and his young bride May. If you haven't watched it, watch it. Very funny animated version in that link at the top. The foolishness and lust of the old man, Othello, comes back to bite him in the butt when his wily wife carries on with the young man. In fact, in front of him, he's temporarily blind, so she thinks she can get away with it. And then a pear falls on his head, and he's like, ah! And he sees it. But actually, this potentially comic plot is subverted into revenge in Othello. But in both cases, it's expressing a male anxiety about not being able to control and contain the female sexuality and female appetite. So there we go. Comic, tragic, all kind of the same anxiousness. A revenge plot. Revenge tragedies were really popular at this period in time. Some of them really did last long. So the Spanish tragedy, Thomas Kyd, there's one that's just called in which the main character is called Vindici, and it's all about having a vendetta. There's lots of them. Revenge tragedy can be seen here. We've got malcontent who schemes revenge, an alienated outsider, that's Iago. It explores the corruption of those in power, probably in this case the corruption of Othello, in that he's tainting the Venetian high society in which he's moving, and women who refuse to co-opt societal norms come to the fore in revenge tragedies. They're often desired and then found disgusting and punished. Lots of women who have like illicit sexual relationships in revenge tragedies, they will die, you'll be happy to hear. But that's definitely part of the generic influence of Othello. There's lots of features of revenge tragedy playing out here. There's a really good link to the e-magazine article through the OneDrive link that I sent you in the email. So have a read for a revision of revenge tragedy. Domestic tragedy. In this common plotline, a cuckolding wife plots to kill her husband with her love. So it's more similar to Titus Andronicus, which Shakespeare wrote before Othello, in which Tamora, the wife, and Aaron, her lover, plot to kill Titus, her husband, which you can see pictured. I'm just going to hand round both men there. Fear of cuckoldry plays on Othello's mind. He does not want to be a Titus. He thinks this might be a tragedy in which he's basically the victim. But as it turns out, it's a revenge tragedy, and he's the villain. Who'd have thought it? To sum up, Shakespeare blended several unlikely generic bedfellows together, almost as if placing the audience in Othello's position, that is, as one who feels he is always misreading events, customs, and characters. Othello is unable to determine what kind of play he is in. He believes he might be in a domestic tragedy of which he is the embarrassed husband, but in fact he's in a terrible revenge plot with these deeply misogynistic and xenophobic undertones and an arch manipulator behind it. And he doesn't realise that right until the end. And cleverly, Shakespeare draws these generic conventions together so that we, like the audience, are not always sure which way it's going to go. And that's what makes a tragedy so compelling to watch, because it could always have been almost could have turned out well. It could have been momentarily averted, but then from that moment you're watching it just decline. Okay, keep watching. Look out for the next video.